Hello and welcome to Beyond with Tiffany Hopkins. We are on Lilydale Radio today, and I have a special guest, one of my neighbors and friends, Celeste Elliott. Hi, Celeste.
Hi,
Hi.
thanks for having me.
Welcome. Oh, it's so good to have you. We have a fun show in store for you today. Celeste has been a registered Lilydale medium for 13 years.
13 years, yeah.
And she's going to share with us a little bit about her abilities and skills. And what we really are going to focus on today is the different types of connections you can make with people when you're doing messages or readings or in a circle. But before we get too far into all that fun, and we'll do a live reading with a friend of mine in a little while. Celeste, can you just tell us a little bit about your practice and what you're up to these days?
Well, I am in Lilydale all year and I do travel. I'm a spiritualist minister also, so I travel to do workshops and lectures and services of various kinds. But this is my home base. And I do a class on Friday evenings on Zoom only for beginners development. And I'm kind of branching out a little bit more with different projects, teaching different classes because I have a real love of that. I also host a free Sunday night development circle online for students to just get a chance to practice, put the theory into work, because that's a very, very valuable thing.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I actually just wrote a workbook journal because I found early in my training that keeping a journal of really, really helped me with my development. It helped me to record synchronicities, and because the more we acknowledge that how spirit is working with us every day, the more the information comes through. They like consistency. They like to know that their signals are not being lost on us. So I have writing prompts and places to record physical conditions, astrological conditions that might be affecting our work. And I think that's, really, really important. It also helps you to figure out, what your skill sets are. I went many years thinking that I was only working with these two clairs skill sets, from spirit. And then somebody pointed out to me that I was also doing these other things, and I didn't even really give myself credit for that. I didn't really realize. And it really helped kind of reframe things for me. So I think if any kind of tool that makes it just a little bit easier is, kind of a good idea.
Absolutely. And it takes so many different things to learn mediumship, like, reading books, keeping a journal, attending classes, doing one-on-ones, doing circles. Like, that's something I talk about all the time in this show. And that's why I love bringing in people like you that do this for so many people. You're helping so many people learn and have all these different ways. And the journal reminds me of, I feel like it's called the red beetle phenomena, but maybe I always keep it in my mind as the red dog phenomena, because I had never seen a red husky before I got my red husky. And now I see them all the time. And I'm like, maybe that's just, there are more of them, but maybe there is something. I know there's like a phenomena that when you start paying attention to things, you notice them more, which, again, chicken and egg, I'm not exactly sure, but there's something to be said for having a place to keep track of what's going on. Like, I've seen the journal and it's so wonderful, and I'm so excited for people to be able to get this, and just like keeping track of all the different things and what circumstances might be bringing in more connection or disturbed connection or whatever it is that's going on.
Yeah. And I think it's, even though connecting with spirit is very much a kind of right-brained process, You have to be willing to do the left brain analysis of it, because it is a practice, but it's also a discipline. And I think that's really important that people understand you have to do that kind of work in order to really be the most open channel and develop that relationship, because it is all about relationships.
That's right. Oh, I love how you said that. I hadn't ever thought of it that way of like, I mean, yes, it's a discipline and it really takes paying attention and keeping track and yeah, doing the same thing over and over and over and seeing what
Yeah,
happens. Yeah,
yeah. It,
absolutely. I also want to say the circle that Celeste does on Friday nights is actually the same circle I started in 7 years ago. It was run by Judith Rochester at that point, and I'm sure anybody who's been listening to this for a while has probably heard me talk about it. It's how I first started with mediumship. So if anybody's looking for like the first step, I definitely recommend that circle. So we'll share Celeste's info so you can find it and find our website and sign up. And you may have noticed those that are watching the video, we've got my cat Sylvester just joined us. So yeah, Celeste has so many resources for those who are learning. And let's start with a little discussion today for those who are exploring different types of connections, right? And
yeah.
we've talked about that on the show in terms of I like to bring forward the information that I think is happening in my brain when I do mediumship, that I'm getting sensory information. My brain is thinking about memories. I'm getting psychic information from the person in front of me. And then there's a lot of different ways to get mediumistic connection and information too. You want to share a little bit how you think about that?
Yeah. So, in a lot of ways, I'm very fortunate because I have been mediumistic my entire life. And because I come from a family where, I don't have stage parents, they kind of accepted it and we're just kind of like, yeah, okay, well, yes, we believe you when you say intuitively this or that. And yes, you're correct. There is, a spirit person hanging out in the living room with us, and nobody made a big deal out of it. So yeah, that was a really, really good experience. And I'm so fortunate with that. But that, gave me the opportunity to have, um, 20 some years of life experience before I ever decided that I was going to, be a professional. And I think it's important that, just as you were talking about, people understand that spirit is working with our nervous system all the time, in the way that they think that we're going to best understand and encode it. Tiffany and I have talked about this kind of off camera a lot, where I truly believe that mediumship is in its own way a kind of neurodivergence. And I don't mean that in remotely a bad way. It's just that, there is with intuition some pattern recognition skill that goes on with that. Where, just as you were saying, spirit will use your filing cabinet, your life experiences, the music that sometimes is very much a way for them to kind of pull a message to the front of your brain and say, pay attention to this situation or what's going on. Something, some kind of memory, or to kind of get you as close as possible to your understanding of an experience. And anything that can be used as a intuitive or psychic skill, because our guides are working with us for both, and the spirit world will work with us for both, then, it's kind of, one set of skills is totally applicable from intuition to mediumship. And it's really fun that we can sit for different things for different reasons and at different times of the year. Um,
Mm,
and, I think it's really important that we all have our own kind of our spiritual work, what we do that's private. And then if you're somebody who's doing work in professionally in some capacity, also what you're doing as your service work publicly as
mm,
well.
mhm.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah.
Do you do different types of connections on your own versus in your readings with others?
Yeah, absolutely. I will sit for guidance for myself, on situations. I will sit just to be, in relationship with, the God of my understanding, to be right with my own soul. I think that's really important. We need to check in with ourselves, and see which direction we're leaning and where we might need to seek out more support.
Mhm,
um and and I think it's also fun to kind of sit for, um you know what's what spirit might want us to know direction wise in general, sort of that macrocosmic stuff, as well as what's going on in our own lives. uh,
mhm.
but I mean, I'll look at what my coffee grounds are
Mm.
saying, because coffee is its own spiritual experience, I'm certain. I'll pull tarot cards for myself.
Mhm.
Of course, in Lilydale, we don't do anything with, any kind of tools other than maybe spirit art, as part of mental mediumship. Um, I'll sit sometimes for, transfiguration or physical mediumship, but I don't have a regular practice with that. That was something I was very into for a while. Um, I'll use my pendulum, whatever, I need in order to kind of get around myself, I guess is the best way to say it.
Great way to put it, yeah,
Get out of
absolutely.
my own head, make sure that I'm really with spirit and not, uh we have to be aware of our own biases when we're doing this work. Um,
Mhm.
that's really, really important.
It
Um,
is. I put a whole section about that in the book, and tried to do I didn't do it, in great detail because 'cause I'm not a psychologist, I'm not a researcher, I don't know, you know, technically everything about how biases work and what all of the possibilities are, there are tons, but I think it's so important to spend time noticing how our brains work when they're in auto drive.
yes,
And that's actually something another pattern recognition thing of if I'm seeing the same thing happen in my regular life as is starting to happen in my spiritual life or in my connection with spirit, then I'm like, oh, maybe that's like something I should take a look at and see what's going on.
exactly right. Yeah. I mean, this plane of reality is our playground. We are, but it's also, it's
It's
sort of
the
the
fact
Montessori model, because it's learning through play, but it's also, in its own way, hard work.
that
And we've got to keep the joy, and we've got to hit the reset button, and whether that is exercise or sleep or meditation or whatever it is that, is renewing for us. That's really, really important.
right. And I love that you bring up your own personal practice as part of how you do your professional practice, and they are still separate. And how much, when you're doing spiritual work for others, I mean, the amount of effort and energy it takes, at least in my experience, requires all this extra. I don't really like calling it self-care because it's more like just the things we need to do in order to survive in a bunch of different modalities. And it can be very easy to be like, I don't need to spend extra time doing spiritual things because I do spiritual things for my job, right? But it's like, unfortunately, we don't have that. Just like, you can't stop making food at home or eating, I should say, if you work in a kitchen, right? Like
That's
you still
exactly That is a perfect analogy as far as I'm concerned. Absolutely. Yeah. Very, very important. And, otherwise, I feel like we can get into cycles also,
Mhm.
and it gets a little monotonous. And
Oh,
that's
interesting.
yeah,
That makes
and that's
sense.
yeah, because if the only thing you know, um, that's what spirit will consider you a subject matter expert on that. And then
Keep getting those same
yeah,
situations. Oh, that's so interesting.
yeah. And that was something um I learned kind of early on through the people that I studied under, but also through personal experience. I very much consider myself a kind of family reunions specialist at this point in my
Mm,
life. um,
mhm,
with my work. And, evidential mediumship is really important to me because I know what a difference that made for me in experiencing that. And so I feel like that kind of transfers to the kind of people and maybe because my practice has been based in Lilydale, that's the kind of the kind of client that it draws people that
mhm.
are seeking healing and upliftment and inspiration. And but you know, th- um, there's grief work that comes with that.
Gotcha.
And spiritualism, of course, is very concerned about showing evidence of continuation of life after death.
Mhm,
Um, but within that work, there are people who have specialties. And for me, in some ways, I consider myself to be kind of a general practitioner. Um,
mhm.
and but it wasn't always that way, because I would get kind of pigeonholed over here, and then I would get kind of pigeonholed over here, and I would go back to my teachers and be like, what do I do? Because I can't take 10 years of miscarriage, overdose, and suicide. I need some light and fluffy."
A variety.
Um, yeah, and that was something that my teacher said to me, "Well, you are in relationship with your guides, you are in relationship with the spirit world. You may be considered a subject matter expert in some way, but you can talk to them about giving you variety and not burning you out, because there are mediums who will pause their um, public practice. If you're a medium, you're a medium. It's the best expression of who you are. So it's
It's true.
people that are concerned it's going to go away, and it's always there. It's just where you put your focus. Um, so I think that's really important, that to be, in my terms, a general practitioner. I also get to witness um, really the relationships, the joy of how the spirit world is experiencing their relationship with the people in the living, and how they're helping them out, and what they think their clients are interested in,
Mhm.
as far as what they're putting their energy into, what's going on in their lives. And that's not unimportant. That's that's another way that we're there for our clients. So um, I don't consider that to be psychic work. I don't consider that. Um, I don't mix that kind of psychic work and mediumship work. A lot of people do. I see nothing wrong with that. But my practice, the spirit loved ones will talk about maybe their best guess estimate based on knowing their client, their relative, their loved one here on our plane. But um, it's not, you must do this. I command you to do that. I'm requiring you, it's nothing like that. And it's not about, there's no predictive model within it. Um,
Yeah, that's
and I
right.
think, yeah, in my world, I think that's an important distinction. So
It is. Well, and on that note, since speaking of we don't know what's going to happen, I think we should do a little reading to
Okay.
show people a little bit what it's like for whether you've never had a reading or seen a reading. We'll do a short, Celeste can give a short message to someone we'll bring on in a minute. And then we'll all talk about the experience and kind of what was happening to give everybody a behind the scenes look at what is going on with both the medium and the sitter. So with that, I'm going to bring on my friend Kindra. Hi, Kindra.
Hi.
Welcome.
Yes. Hi,
So
Tiffany.
Kindra, I'm so happy to have you here. Kindra is a friend of mine from another life, long before I moved to Lilydale. Celeste and Kindra said a few moments of greeting before we started recording, but they don't know each other. And what I want to do is just open up the floor for Celeste to give Kindra. I believe it'll be your first greeting. Is that right, Kindra?
Absolutely, yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Very
Yeah,
So I'm going to be quiet over here. Leave it to you two.
yeah, I didn't know it was your first connection, so that's extra special. So thank you so much for allowing me to do this. And as I kind of focus in on the spirit world around you, I'm being made aware of two communicators on the spirit side. I have a gentleman that would like to connect, and he is giving me the feeling of almost like a neuropathy in the feet with him. He's pointing out your recliner chair, and he's talking about how much he enjoyed his recliner chair. And I see him sitting in that, and he was showing me his feet and how he would walk around the house in his slippers, not deck shoes, but like a slide-on slipper, and how that helped him.
interesting.
Yeah. So, would you understand the gentleman that had because there's something going on with the lungs for him also before passing. So like a COPD or a yeah, I hear something with the lungs. Um,
Yeah, I'm not sure right off the bat. I have a lot of family medical history, but
yeah.
nothing lung related that I can think of immediately. But I also, yeah, I'm not super in touch with a lot of my family, so it would be very intriguing if it was someone that I don't know very well.
Yeah. And the other interesting thing about him is he does give me the impression that he did know you. So I can report that back, but I'm also feeling because the communicator I haven't even gotten to yet, that's female, um, I get her in my mind's eye as standing right beside you as though she's literal family. This guy actually feels more to me like what I want to refer to as chosen family or family of the heart. So that would be like an in-law, even if you weren't legally connected with partner, um, or somebody that was like family for you, but not necessarily literal. So would you understand in that context the connection with him a little better?
I don't right off the bat, but
That's okay.
again, I think that, you know, I'm not super in touch with a lot of the different parts of my family at this point, but
Sure.
uh, there's a woman in my history that would fit that description. I don't know if that's
Interesting.
outside the realm of possibility.
Yeah, I was getting the imagery of more masculine, I have to say, so I don't wanna change that. But the other reason that I was thinking this was, non-literal like an in-law or that kind of thing is, I felt my hand being pulled down to a ring that I am not wearing, but just the feeling physically of the ring. And typically that would tell me either that it was a ring that was inherited and gifted down, even if it's not you that has it, or it would just mean like in-law related. Okay.
Okay.
But I do understand the woman who would have the swelling issues, that I think is probably who you're talking about. Um, so, um, okay. Um, the woman that you were thinking of with that description, would you understand her connected to you through mom's side or female energy?
Ish. The woman that, even with your comment about the ring, that brought her back to mind as well, the same one that I was thinking of.
Mhm.
Um, do you want me to go into sharing who that is with you right now, or just hold it in
Um,
my mind?
yeah, just hold it in your mind because I don't wanna, you know, uh, drop into the psychic. I wanna stay focused on the spirit people. And, I will say though, um, she has a way of being, it's her way of just kind of like, as soon as you acknowledged her, she wanted to step up to the microphone and, just kinda give you a kind of energetic hug.
Hmm.
Um, and I get the feeling of personality with her of like, um, she wanted to do things very much behind the scenes to take care of the people that she loved. And you didn't have to ask her because she's very thoughtful, I want to say. So if she knew that there was something that you liked, if she was going to make cookies, she had in mind what your favorite cookie was going to be. If she was, um, doing things around the house and she knew you had a busy week, it's like, oh, well, I'll do this extra nice thing for her so that she doesn't have to. And there's an energy of emotion with her. When I connect to spirit, I often connect through the heart space. And I feel that energy of emotion. And it kind of makes my eyes well up a little bit. And I was feeling her even when I was doing the interview with portion of this with Tiffany, where it was sort of like, um, this this energy of being with you and helping you to see things, in two different ways, but trying to connect the vision for you.
Hmm.
Okay, so helping you with both, inspiration and practical, and the acknowledgement that you're more worried about the practical than the creative, right-brained aspect of what you've got going on in your life. Um, and um, it's this energy of needing to help you clear things up physically, um,
Mhm.
removing what's no longer necessary. Um, and I all of a sudden I'm being made aware of the image in my mind's eye of like wanting to put things into moving boxes, but more about you having things for younger people around you that it's like we're trying to, when kids are little and they outgrow like their gloves and their hats and their coats and things like that. And
Mhm.
of course, I'm thinking in terms of winter because it
Right.
definitely is. Um, but just trying to, it's like what no longer serves us, we send on to be a blessing to others is the message that I'm getting with it. Okay. And I'm being told that you feel it's tied to self-preservation as well. And I will say that, you know, part of the spiritual practice is that energetic space keeping, clearing out, is very much an exercise of reclaiming one's power. And it's being acknowledged as like a really, really good thing for you. So,
Nice.
yeah. And the woman on mom's side just keeps wanting to, and as curly haired people, we don't really let people run their hands through our hair, but but I see her kind of doing one of these for you, okay? As though she would have helped you with the hair when you were younger. And she actually physically feels a little bit shaky to me, but just at the very, very end of her life. Like she had to be assisted a little bit with that. And she's showing me the, do you remember tray tables? How, you know, like, yeah, those little stands that people would have in their living room for like TV dinners or games or whatever. She's kind of showing me one of those, like, that had all her stuff on it.
Interesting.
Yeah. So, okay. Because I know she had to do some doctoring towards the end. So would you understand from the description? Yeah. Because she's showing me almost like the pill organizer, you know? Okay. Okay. So she was mobile. She could get up and move around, but I feel like she spent a lot of time, you know, kind of stationary, like she made it easy on herself.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay. And again, I feel that connected through female or through mom's side. I'm being asked to reiterate that.
Yeah,
So,
that
okay.
makes sense. Yeah.
Thank you. She's all about bringing you healing, and that can mean, you know, on a lot of different levels. So, but just know that she's grateful to you. Because yeah, you showed her a lot of love and a lot of kindness, and she's saying you would. It's just a love fest. You would show that to her. She's showing it back to you, and she you know. So it goes both ways. I have to say. So, okay.
I love hearing that. Of course.
Good. So I will say, she knows that when you're making your bed and you're putting the pillows in place that you talk to her sometimes or you think about her. And so just please do keep talking to her out loud or in your head, however you choose to communicate, because she does hear you and she does really appreciate and love that you're willing to do that for her. So.
Okay.
All right. And I will leave it at that. So
Thank you so much, Celeste. So now we're gonna switch gears and do the behind the scenes part, which normally does not happen in a reading. So this is not a normal procedure. This kind of conversation that we're about to have is normal in a practice setting, in a classroom setting. You would normally debrief if two practice mediums or student mediums are practicing with each other, they would give a reading till the end. Kindra, you were a perfect sitter. You didn't give too much information. You just kept, you know, yes, no, I don't know. That was perfect because that allows Celeste to keep going. And because if you start sharing information, it sends things other directions, which I'll let Celeste talk about. But perfect sitter, thank you, especially having never done this, because I find in a lot of other modalities, tarot or psychic readings, you do talk a lot more, or in a care work setting, like in a therapy session or a grief counseling, like it's a similar situation, but those are situations where you talk a lot as a sitter, and mediumship, you don't talk a lot. And some people don't know that. And I didn't even tell you that, which was irresponsible of me, but you were perfect. So don't have to worry about it. But, as I'm sitting here observing, which is also not exactly a normal situation, I was just noticing that, and I could be totally off with this, so I'm just going to give you two my experience, and then let Kindra share a little bit about what it was like, and then let Celeste also share what it was like for her. And as somebody who's been both a sitter and a medium many times, I felt like I could feel the connection that you two had, and how it was a little like, Kindra, I could tell it was when I was feeling the energy, like I could tell it was your first reading, because there's this thing that happens once you've done this a bunch, that you start opening up, and like things just feel a little different. And so I felt like I could feel your energy as you're like, what is happening right now? Like, was it a little, were you a little like, I know it's really unusual to have people come and tell you about the spirits that are around you. So I'm just curious if it was a little like that for you, and what you were feeling as you were sitting there hearing about people. And also the other thing I noticed is before I started doing a lot of mediumship, I didn't have this like Rolodex in my head of all my dead people. And I would spend the whole time when I started, and I think that's what creates the energy I just talked about, like being like, who is it? Who is it? Going through every person in my mind, and I wasn't like there. And it's been years, and I finally have them all, like, okay, I don't have to do this like searching. And I was wondering if that might have been a little bit what's happening for you. Because yeah, that always took all my energy when I was first starting, because I'm like, you just don't think about some people that much before you do, when you're not doing a lot of mediumship. So I'll stop talking and let you answer some of my questions.
No, that's kind of exactly what was happening. I'm a people pleaser, and I've always wanted to be a good student and do all my homework. So as Celeste was giving me this information, I was like, okay, let me try to figure out who this is, so that I have good feedback to give. And I have lost quite a few people throughout my life. Some of them were, grandparents and stuff that you kind of expect. I lost my father quite young, and so I'm not close with a lot of his side of the family. Sure. And so that's where I was like, oh, I could have people over there that I'm not really thinking about right now.
Yeah.
I think the other thing that was challenging for me is that my whole life has been very woman centric. So when you were talking about the man right off the bat, I was like, oh, wow, I was raised by a single mom, and all my relatives, I have a sister, I have aunts, I have all of these women in my life, and very few men. So that was a challenge for me to work out. But yes, no, you're exactly right, Tiffany. I was just like trying to be the good student of figuring out who Celeste could be talking about. But as I just kind of listened longer, I was like, okay, let's just there's a lot to take in here. And I think that it's going to be much more interesting if I allow myself to sit with the information for a while, but also knowing that we were going to have this little chat afterwards. I was like, oh, I can try to figure out some of it later, but also, like you were saying at the end, Celeste, with, listening to intuition and inspiration in the creative side of my life, that is 100% what I'm trying to focus on right now. And yeah, I don't know how much you want to delve into all of that before we let Celeste talk, or what do you think, Tiffany?
I think maybe we can just hear a little bit from Celeste, and then maybe we go back and talk about some of the points of the reading to talk about how those landed and how those came through for Celeste. But I love this topic for those of us who are new to reading and being a medium, to hear from a sitter and like what it's like, because it is a lot. And so it's hard to remember that as a medium. So yeah, let's hear from Celeste, and then I'm going to come back to you, Kindra.
Yeah. And that's, yeah, especially for your first time, I think you did fantastic. Because your energy was really open, and that's so important, because some people, in a totally unintentional way, their energy just kind of shuts down. Their brain kind of goes into fight or flight, and they just freeze, and you were able to stay open, and that was that made my work a whole lot easier. So thank you for that.
Well, and also thank you, Celeste. I didn't say that. Thank you
Oh,
for,
yeah.
I know it takes energy, and like you guys were talking about in the opening, like all of the work that you have to do to do these readings, even ahead of time or after the fact. And so thank you for spending your energy on me.
Oh, you're so welcome. I have a really, really bad joke about, the best mediumship is premeditated, but not pre-planned. You have to do the meditation. But yeah, I felt like what's interesting is when you're reading for first timers, sometimes it's the spirit person's first time trying to connect through a medium also. So there's a kind of double learning curve, which can be really exciting and really interesting, because your guides are always, my guides are always kind of in the background, like trying to help connect the information and translate it into a way that I'm going to best understand it. I found it very interesting that a lot of your people were giving me things kind of, he was speaking in very visual terms. And because I was getting, like the slippers and the lazy boy and that kind of information. And I often find that when I switch communicators, they switch skill set, or they switch channels of information. And I went into her, and she was definitely giving me both what I would refer to as claircognizance, where they kind of drop the information into my awareness. But I was also getting the physical sensation with her. I could tell, that feeling of swelling in the body, and the feeling of the ring with the hand. I thought that was very, very interesting. So I was trying to go as much kind of behind the scenes as we were going, and kind of keep that in mind also. But yeah. You have some very fun people, which I appreciate.
I would believe that. Knowing Kindra, they would be fun. So Kindra, now, without worrying about being right or wrong, because like we just talked about, especially when you're first starting with this, and you didn't plan to have a reading. Kindra was willing to do this on the fly. It's not like she came to a medium looking to speak with somebody.
Right.
So nobody was prepared, right? Like when you book a reading, or you're going to mediumship school or classes, like your people on the other side get prepared because they know what's going to happen. Kindra's people didn't have that time. But I'm wondering, you said the message that they gave you felt really right on, the part at the end. That was like the message portion, I would call that. Tell us a little bit about some of the information that came through, and this is always a little hard to talk about, because we are, as mediums, we're getting an information and we are kind of interpreting it and saying it out loud. And it's not always like a direct photocopy of the information. It's about how it is interpreted. And a lot of times, Celeste talked about this earlier, something will come in and then you say it and then it turns into almost something else in the sitter, right? Like, so it's not it's not always 1-for-1. So I'm a little curious, Kindra, for you, like, it doesn't matter, like, it's not a test that gets graded for Celeste of like 98% was correct or whatever. It's like, what did it feel like as stuff was coming in, and what kind of, you did a great job during it. You said she came back to mind when you spoke of this. And that is like exactly what I want my sitters to do, of like, this happened to me. And so I know what you're talking about makes sense to me because she came to my mind. Right. So I'm curious of when else that happened, or what it was like to be kind of hearing Celeste's words and then noticing what they bring up for you. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And like I said, as Celeste continued to speak and share, just I ended up being kind of like bombarded with all these little bits and pieces of information that connected. At first, it wasn't like I was saying, it wasn't super clear who that particular person might be, but I was seeing bits and pieces of a lot of different people, like my grandparents on my mom's side, both had health issues at the end of life. My grandfather died of Parkinson's, which is like that trembling, that you mentioned, something like that. My grandmother moved out to the West Coast, and we took care of her for a long time before she passed.
Yeah.
So that definitely spoke to that woman who had the pill packet, and she needed a lot of care. And luckily my mom and my aunt are both nurses, so I didn't have to step up too hard. I kind of got to be the fun granddaughter who just was able to love her kind of unconditionally while my aunt and mom did the hard work.
Right.
So that's kind of, I think she was maybe one of the people there. But the ring thing, when you talked about the ring thing, so my mother-in-law, Eric's mom, she passed in 2013 of lung cancer, pneumonia due from complications with lung cancer. So there's that. But one of my memories, one of my dearest memories of her was on our wedding day. She had been married 4 times, and Eric and I were just going for our first, hoping it was going to stick. But when he put my wedding band on next to my engagement band during the ceremony, his mom, after the ceremony, she took my ring and she said, actually, the engagement band goes on the outside and the wedding band goes on the inside so that it's closer to your heart. And I was like, oh my God, that's like the most precious thing anyone's ever told me. Yeah. So that feels very right.
Yeah.
That she maybe was around as well.
Yeah. Yeah, there were definitely, from my perspective, 3 different communicators. So that makes perfect sense to me. Yeah.
I have another friend who passed of lung cancer who's my age. And I did go into this, like, of course, you can't help it, like hoping to hear from my dad or to hear from her, but I still think it's precious just to know that those energies of those people are out there. It's not really something that I put that much attention to, but now that we're doing this, I think it's fun to think about them being out there rooting for me. And I guess that's where it came to at the end as well, is that I am going through, I've been jokingly calling it a midlife crisis, because we recently moved across the country. We shook up our whole life, and we've been landed here for about a year now. When you talked about the boxes, I was thinking about, and this is very literal, but I was thinking about how much stuff we moved across the country that I was like, why did I need all this? This is like, it's some of it, not all of it. Some of it I'm grateful for, but some of it does feel like baggage at this point. And I just lost my job, it wasn't a major career job. I was just waiting tables, but it was a good fit for me. for the last year, but now I'm trying not to rush into anything else, and I'm rethinking everything, and I'm trying to do the thing where you balance practicality versus what do I want my life's purpose to be. So that all resonates with those messages that you brought in at the end.
Yeah. Well, time to make room for better all the way around. So you're doing good.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
I just, again, want to, for the listeners, isn't it fascinating to get the inside scoop on what's happening with these two as they were doing this, right? Because all of us who are just watching and listening, we get a little bit of information from their words and maybe watching their body language a little bit. But when you start to hear what's happening for Kindra as all of this is going on, what's happening for Celeste as all this is going on, is just so rich and wild and deep. All that's happening in these two humans as they're sharing like a couple words, right? Like it's not a lot, not for a lot of time. And I feel like I just learned all these beautifully deep things about Kindra's life in a few minutes. So thank you so much for being willing to share this in a recorded way. And it's just reminds me of how amazing this practice is for us to be able to kind of connect deeper within ourselves as we are attempting to reach out to spirit, right? That's what's kind of amazing to me, is what's happening within each of us as this is going on. And I really appreciate both of you sharing your internal experience as you're doing this, because unless you've done it yourself, you just don't know how deep it is.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you for facilitating, Tiffany.
Absolutely my pleasure. And I just want to say it was really fun also to hear Celeste mention moving boxes and the wedding ring, because I was actually at Kindra's wedding, and I knew she had moved across country, and it's just like such a huge deal to do the kind of move she did from the place. We're both lived in the same area in Northern California, and that's how we know each other from like 20 years or something at least. And the move, she's one of my only friends who has moved, wait, did I say east from back west? Moved east like I have. There's not a lot of us that do the west to east move. Most people are going the other direction. And so just for me, it was just like, like somehow those things both got in there.
Well, that makes me think about maybe Celeste picked up on that because you had that knowledge in your mind, and Celeste picked up on some of that knowledge of me from you.
Well, and also she mentioned making the bed, and I don't think she was on the call yet when Kindra and I were talking about me making my bed this morning.
Oh,
so
yeah, she was taking away to take care of the dog when we had that conversation.
Yeah. So
that's funny. Yeah. You never know with spirit, because that gives them topics of conversation too, so.
Yep.
Because her people were already there, even when I wasn't.
Exactly. All right. Well, thank you both so much. It has been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you.
And I want to give Celeste just a minute. Can you tell people how they can get in touch with you, get your workbook, join your classes, all of that?
Yeah. Everything is on my website at celesteelliott.com. Fairly easy to find like that. There will be a link up for the book. It's what it looks like. It's a spiral bound workbook. So, and the classes are all listed there. The Friday night classes are take one or take them all as a series, depending on what you prefer. And I'll have some in-person things going on through spring as well. So, and
the circles are really affordable. It's $10, right?
Yeah.
So it's not like a big investment if you just want to try it. And note for those who are listening, it's Celeste Elliott with 2 L's and 2 T's in her last name. and I'll put the link in the show notes. So
Perfect.
thank you both again, and thank you all for listening.
Thank you.